Right. Hello. Hello. Uh, Hello, everyone. I'm just recording a little walkthrough on with some notes on visuals. I hope you can hear me clearly. There's a lot of rain in the background. We've put together a draft of some scopes for sound, visuals, storytelling, as well as editing, video editing, and pace and rhythm. We'll be adding to this as we go along. And if anything, we might add some people to contribute to this as well. But this will start becoming a bit of a work in progress board where we can pin ideas and explore those ideas within the narrative of the story. So hopefully this will serve us some direction. Now, we're still working on the final framework, but we have established some key archetypes. For example, the predominant archetype for this story, it will be what's called the magician archetype. And the magician archetype is mostly known for wanting to be remembered, for making win-win solutions happen, as well as being visionary and kind of a catalyst in its category. There are some other archetypes that will come in as well. We're also looking at bringing in the explorer archetype, which seeks to explore, obviously, the world around itself by independence, as well as being true to itself and unbound. There'll be two other archetypes that will be used in order to make decisions, which will be the caregiver and Everyperson. The caregiver wants to contribute to the world through service, compassion, and protection, and the Everyperson wants to build connections with others through belonging, earnestness, and finding common ground. So I can explain a little bit about where those archetypes come from. The magician is predominantly about doing the sort of impossible or making the impossible happen. So that's connecting with trying to tell the story of surfing in Sri Lanka, but also trying to get more people involved by trying to get this crowdsourcing strategy to get the content, but also working with people. And possibly this secondary narrative of the wave that we're talking about, this secret or this mysterious wave, which brings us into the explorer archetype. So the film and the story will have this idea of seeking on a general sense, which is the every surfer is looking for that wave or seeking for that perfect wave. On a big scale and on a small scale, every morning going and thinking about which spot is going to be working according to the conditions, the weather conditions. And finally, our own narrative, which is the secret, this unknown spot. And then finally, the caregiver and the Everyperson. The Everyperson is really just trying to tell the story, and not just to insiders, but the idea that the film is an insider telling the story to outsiders. So it's not necessarily Sri Lankans and foreigners. It's anybody who's been in the scene or has been surfing in Sri Lanka long enough to know the culture and sharing that with the people coming from the outside. The outside can be tourists, but it could also be Colombo people. And the caregiver is the one that's also trying to stay true to the culture. We have a few rules, like we're not going to identify any spots. We're not trying to expose everything. We're trying to just tell the story from an insider's perspective. So as custodians of that knowledge, of that information. So that's the grand picture. For the sake of where we're at in the project, I'm going to jump directly into sound, just because that's what we're looking to establish. And then I'll quickly get into visual story storytelling and the editing and rhythm. So the first track you just heard is one of the tracks that we put into this category. So I'll be sharing the link to this Pinterest board on the group. You'll see there's a lot of stuff at the bottom here. Don't worry so much about that. This is content that I've been adding that I haven't grouped yet. So if you're trying to see sort of agreed upon images, always look in these folders. So you can, once you go to the board, you'll go to the sound folder. And here there's a few videos and sound clips that we've pinned to this board. And each of them kind of address an example of one of those archetypes. So the first one you heard when we started this walkthrough is this archetype track, which called, it's actually an album, I think, called Conversations with Ghosts. And this is a really good example of one of the facets of the magician archetype. So it's a little bit on the impressive side and the wonder side as well. There's a sense of accomplishment, like something's been achieved. So that could either be catching the wave. For this music could either be a sound that would be used to introduce or contextualize a place that was found, or a certain day that everyone remembers as being one of the greatest surf conditions. Or it could just be catching really nice waves or wildlife. So there's a sense of wonder. So you can check this out and have through it. The track you just heard was the beginning of the album. There's some other tracks here, like the Sun's track. It's a lot more Caregiver, but it's a lot more aggressive in terms of there's a heaviness to it. So you feel a little bit more of that faster paced rhythm. I'll just play a quick snapshot of it so you can see the contrast. The first one we heard was a lot more wonder. So there's that kick. You're feeling that bass kick, which kind of creates the rhythm, builds up the pace. I think we talked about this, Tom. Some of your ideas connected with this in the sense that you're bringing the pace, increasing the pace to kind of match that excitement of the wave. So there we're starting to also get into, it's still on the magician side, but we're getting into Caregiver in the sense that with this track where we're trying to stay true. We're trying to take care of this story and make sure that it's told properly. So it's a bit serious. So we looked at that. These are surf videos. I'll come back to that in a minute. Another way of using the sort of wonder, or the idea of the magician, is in this track Holy Man, which I'll just play quickly. So you can see how it supplements the visuals. So one thing that we've been talking about is the play between the supplementary sounds, and so the soundtrack, and the sounds of the ocean, of the wave, of the birds, of nature. This film is definitely going to there's going to be a dance between the mood that we're bringing into the film through these tracks, through the playlist, and through the key track, as Shafni and Tom uh, uh, correctly recommended, some parts it's going to be driven by the sounds from the video, and other times it's going to be more driven by the soundtrack. And I think this is a good example as how we're going to be playing with those two at different times. So here you can see the sound, you can hear the sound of the bicycle and the speed of the bicycle picking up, and we're seeing the visuals pick up, but slowly we're hearing that Dennis Wilson piano in the background, and then it goes directly into the sound of the track only. So the rain's picking up. I hope you can hear me. We can see here that it started off with the sound from the clip, and then it moved into the track for it, and the video also slowed down. So that dance between the editing and the sound will be important. And I think it's just something, again, that you guys talked about. So that's there. Yeah, so you can go through this. Some of the tracks are more magician, others are more caregiver. Then there's also Everyperson. I think the Kahil track, the album, the quartet, will be a good example of Everyperson, just because we're going to also have scenes of people hanging out. Possibly the interviews will be in someone's home. So when we start telling these stories from these interviews, some of them will have a very much of a wonder to them. Others will have more of a down to earth, matter of fact. So there'll definitely be an Everyperson sort of approach, particularly when telling these stories to an outsider. If the stories and everything is too insider or too focused on specific surf knowledge, it will be very difficult for an outsider to understand. So we also want to have that kind of more inviting track. So I'll just play that as an example. So it still has a bit of wonder to it, but it has a kind of an uplifting, positive, approachable, everyone's included kind of vibe to this track. Still having that rhythm as well, with the same pacing that's a bit faster. I'll just fast forward a bit. So this will be a good segue to get into some of the visuals for the storytelling, since this will most likely have the Everyperson archetype. So we're trying to think about how we're going to visualize some of these stories, because a lot of the stories that will be told will be stories of the past. So we should have access to some old photographs, and most likely these will be stills because there won't be any footage from back then. So we want a track music for this section of the film to have not necessarily a nostalgic feel to it, but an inviting, like, come into this story, let me take you on this journey into the past, or into something that happened to me and I'm sharing with you. So for these parts of the narrative, we'll probably be having a lot more of a portrait approach. So whether it's taking the pictures ourselves or using photographs, and possibly even photographing some boards, which is another nice way of telling the story about what happened, is if we tell it through the perspective of the board. So anyways, we'll be developing this part some more. Another track that I think be worth having a look at. No, it's not this. Sound, I think we covered. Yeah. So there's this one, this rival console. Is a nice example, again, of something very similar to what Tom you were sharing with us, while also having that explorer archetype. So just fast forward a bit. So, and for this Explorer track, I'll get into the visuals, general visuals that we're looking to, or hoping that we're going to get from the audience, but the direction of the film, you want to have this kind of explorer, magician archetype to the imagery. So I'll just play the track and walk you through the visual, or show you some visuals to go with it. So the Explorer is really about trying to get to the closer to the truth, and this is a nice segue into the pacing and editing that we're looking at. And this surf film is a great example of that. I'll just play it again from the beginning. It also holds the same kind of dance between isolated sounds from the videos, with a soundtrack to give it a rhythm and a pacing for the emotional side. So I'll play it with sound. Particularly for this, we're definitely looking at the way the director of this film is using color and silhouetting the characters. So it's not so much about the person surfing, but more about the surf itself, the catching the wave and the movement of the body and the shape of the wave and so on. So that's the strength of this that we're hoping to extract. Yeah, and there's some sound effects in here too, which I think we all talked about, possibly looking at for later on. So that's a short walkthrough of the whole thing. There's some more little notes on editing, which I'll just quickly do now. There's two videos. One has a narrative. You'll see. So this is a good example of sound as well. You can hear the sound of the water underwater, which is really nice, especially as an intro. And then you can hear the wind and the wave in the background. So this is, and then the track starts. So this is another video to check out if you want to see how we're hoping to use editing with sound. And then the last one is this one, which is a similar duality between video and edited sound, except in this case, it's not sounds of nature or sounds of the ocean. It's sounds of someone telling a story, which I think might in the future, once we have some more interviews, make for another interesting trailer, which is more a told story, driven by a told narrative.
Deus estava muito inspirado quando criou as ondas, cara. Eu vejo o mar flat, ele é lindo, mas quando eu vejo uma onda quebrando, eu tenho que parar, eu olho, porque é como se o mar estivesse sorrindo mesmo. Meu nome é Tom Veiga, trabalho como designer.
Excuse me. I think that those two examples are a good starting point. Yeah, go through it. Go through the whole Podi Scene folder on Pinterest. If you have any questions or you want me to unpack anything, just send a message on the group and we'll take it from there. We'll have a proper formally written framework probably next week, but as promised, here's the review of it. So now we have the emotional side, the intuitive side, and we have the rational side. So what we're hoping to do is use these archetypes and later on the report in order to make final decisions. So if we're trying to decide which track to use or which one is more appropriate, or the pacing, trying to see which one evokes that impression in the viewer is a great way to use as a tiebreaker. So I hope that that's comprehensive enough for you, Tom, and Shafni to finish up this phase, and then we'll keep working on it. The frameworks are not necessarily meant to be set in stone. They could definitely be changed. It's just if we are changing them, let's discuss it. And then that way, at least we're all on the same page. It's not necessarily meant to be set in stone, but more as a guide and a tiebreaker for ideas. All right. Have a nice day. Yeah, talk soon.